Many persons are not humble, they're only humbled. Don't think you are humble when you don't have enough resources to fund your pride yet. At 23, I got my master's. At 25, I had my PhD. And then someone is still struggling with 200 level at 29. You will feel like you're better than that person, not knowing that it is time and chance that happens to everybody. You that God has helped, you just healed one headache there, one stomach ache there, you start raising your shoulders, you're carrying protocol up and down. If you base your weaknesses and then you excuse them by temperament, by zodiac sign, I am sanguine, I am melancholy, I am choleric, I am phlegmatic, I am Pisces, I am Leo, I am Cancer, I am whatever. You think that is the reason you behave the way you behave, you need deliverance, and we can conduct it for you right now. February 14th, 2012, 9:48 p.m. A lady slapped me.
Lord, the trumpet in Zion, sound the alarm. This is a war cry. Devil will say no to you over this generation. I shall let the army roll. Let the army roll. Kapaya na palada. Say let the army roll.
You are welcome back to the Total Christian Life podcast, where we herald biblical standards. My name is Gideon Abalaka, but of course you can call me Man who serve Jesus. And on tonight's episode, we want to address a very crucial topic. Tonight we'll be talking about identifying tendencies. You see, I've noticed a lot of things about Christians. Many Christians are not self-aware, many Christians are not self-conscious, and many Christians lie to themselves. Most times they won't try to lie to God. But tonight we want to address this very crucial issue, because many Christians don't know that the things that you're not aware of is what the devil can use to prey on you. Most times we do things that are very innocent, or we do things that we don't know that the result is going to be consequential because you're not aware of them. If you don't identify your tendencies as a Christian, in most cases, that's what the devil is going to use to prey on you. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, not for lack of prayer, not for lack of fasting, not for lack of Bible study, for lack of knowledge. So do you have adequate knowledge about your tendencies? That's what we have come to discuss tonight. And I want to start by defining what a tendency is. I looked up the definition of a tendency, and I saw that a tendency is a likelihood of behaving in a particular way or going in a particular direction, attending toward. So a tendency is not behaving in a particular way. No, it is a likelihood. I don't really like maths. Right from school, I don't really like maths, but I know that the probability of some things is not always zero. So the probability that you can do this, that this might happen, is what we can refer to as a tendency. A likelihood of behaving in a particular way or going in a particular direction, a tending toward. I think Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 tells us that, seeing wherefore that we are encompassed with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside the weight and the sin that does so easily beset us, and let us run with perseverance the race that is set before us. So there is the weight, there is the sin that can so easily entangle believers. That is what we call tendencies. There are some things the devil cannot use to tempt you, because he knows that your weaknesses are not there. So those things that can easily entangle you, besetting sins, are what we call tendencies. Okay, this is supposed to be a two-part series. I thought I could put everything into one, but while putting my notes together, I realized that we're going to have to split it into two parts. So this is the part one. We'll just do basic introduction, and then in the second part, we'll get into the crux of the matter. So I'll start by listing the common tendencies that Christians encounter. The average Christian, most Christians, many Christians, in fact, sometimes all Christians. These tendencies I'm going to list, one go touch you. If you not touch you, please come and lay hands on me. The first we'll start with is pride. Oh yes, pride. Now this is a very common tendency. Some persons don't even know that they have pride tendencies. I think someone once said, many persons are not humble, they're only humbled. Don't think you are humble when you don't have enough resources to fund your pride yet. You might think you're a humble person, you don't have anything to be proud of. Now, there are two forms of pride. We have ego, which is just in one word, cheap pride. It's a heightened sense of self, where you put yourself to be above what you are. The second is the pride of life. And the pride of life is not just pride. Because in the case of pride or just cheap ego, you have nothing to boast of. But the pride of life is self-aggrandizement in the face of obvious achievement. You have results to show. You have proofs to show that you are capable of these things, and then you tend to raise your shoulders. And this is the pride of life. You have money, you have cars, you have houses, you have people at your command. There is every reason, every valid reason to raise your shoulders. That is the pride of life. You have results to show for it. And many times, this kind of pride, people excuse it. You can call it whatever it is you want to call it. We'll address that much later. But these are the two forms of pride I want us to take note of. But there are other things I will call categories of pride. The first is pride of face. The pride of face is how much better we look than others. For example, I'm a very good-looking young man, and by our standards, there might be people that you think are not as good-looking as you are. Then you feel like, who are you to talk to me? You that look like yesterday, but sorry. But you get the point. After doing your makeup of 50,000 naira, 100,000 naira, and then someone comes stand with you with a cherubi, what to call in my language, a cherubi, all back. You're like, come on, I'm more beautiful than you. It can stem pride inside of you. But unless you learn to address these tendencies from the early stage, it's going to take a chokehold on you. Pride of face. The next is pride of place. How can you ask that of someone in my position? Do you know who I am? Do you know where I've gone to? Imagine you've just been promoted to a position in your office, and then someone who used to be your colleague and your friend is now your subordinate, and then he's not trying to talk to you the normal way you guys talk. Now you're like, guy, don't try that thing again. No, I'm not on the same level again. It can build pride in you because you're no longer at the same place you were. So when you reach a certain height in life, when it's as if the whole world is at your feet, this pride of place can come in, but it starts as a tendency. The next is pride of race. The kind of background we come from, the kind of family we come from. This is what makes racism so rampant, where one race feel as if they are more important or better than another race. Do you know where I come from? I come from a rich family. I come from a family that is among the creme de la creme of the society. Who are you? Where are you coming from? Pride of race. This is another category of pride. The next, pride of pace. For example, I'm a very young man that God has helped. I went through school very fast. I finished primary school, secondary school, university, served at a very young age. And so I might feel like when I see someone who is older than me and then he's still in the university, there's every tendency to feel like, this guy is slow. We forget that everybody in life has different exam questions, so we can't have the same answers. Everybody has their time. Everybody has their pace. Everybody has their place in destiny. At 23, I got my master's. At 25, I had my PhD. And then someone is still struggling with 200 level at 29. You will feel like you're better than that person, not knowing that it is time and chance that happens to everybody. So there is the pride of pace. I can achieve this thing faster than you, so I'm better than you. It is pride, oh. Better acknowledge that it is pride. Then the last I'll talk about on this pride is pride of grace. So many men of God, respectfully speaking, will think they are better than other men of God because they are more eloquent, they are more oratorial. Have you been to my church? I've raised the dead, I've spoken before presidents. You that God is still managing in one village in Kogi State. Kogi State is my state too, so there's no derogatory statement there. You now feel like I'm better than you as a man of God. We're not in the same class. I wonder who's the principal of the school. And so you feel you can't associate with some persons based on the things that you have achieved by the grace of God upon your life. You forget that Paul called himself the chiefest of sinners. This was someone that wrote 2/3 the New Testament, yet he brought himself down. I don't want to use this, but that's the best expression. He still brought himself down so low to associate with people that should not talk to him. This man was highly cerebral, very intellectual. He was someone that knew scriptures, had encounters with Jesus, went to the third heavens, and so on and so forth. But see how humbly he tried to communicate his messages. But you that God has helped, you just healed one headache there, one stomach ache there, you start raising your shoulders, you're carrying protocol up and down. I don't see anything wrong in that if you're doing it just for whatever it is. But if it starts building pride in you, you have to address it. But all this starts as tendencies. Remember, we're addressing tendencies, not even the main thing itself. If I was to talk on pride, I will go deeper. But if you see that these things, I'm seeing signs of them, you should address it. So pride, I've listed the forms of pride and the categories of pride that I've studied. If you see any of these tendencies, know that it is common to Christians. That is number one only. Right. Let's look at number two, lust. I don't want to say every Christian encounters this, but I've spoken with a lot of persons. I have so many friends, and I can tell you that 9 out of 10 Christians, maybe that's on the high side, I can tell you that 7 out of 10 Christians battle with lust. And the truth is that we were brought up in a society where you cannot really sit down to discuss these things with people because they might judge you. Imagine calling somebody and saying, I'm dealing with lust. It's like, you too, man of God, you this tongue blasting, fire spitting believer dealing with lust. But many of us have lost tendencies. So it is not that it is a bad thing that you're having these tendencies. You must just understand that these are tendencies, like I started with, common to Christians. These are tendencies common to human beings. As far as you're a human being, you must have these tendencies. So lust is the second one. The third is anger. Like someone says, anger. I am at anger. Many persons have anger tendencies and they've not addressed this. You flare up at every given opportunity, very little things that don't really mean anything. You find yourself getting upset at them. It's a sign that you have anger tendencies. I think I talked about this when I had an episode on red flags. Many persons will avoid partners that have anger tendencies because it can lead to violence. Most times, tendencies lead to other things. So do you have anger issues? Have you noticed that if this thing happened, there's a way I feel? You can keep something in mind for a long time and then you're still angry about it. The sun goes down your anger, rises on your anger, and your anger has not gone down. It means you have these tendencies. You have to address them. I don't have much time, so I'm not going to dwell on the other points. I'm just going to list, these are tendencies that are common to Christians. And I want us to be aware of them so that the devil will not take us unawares. So let's look at the next point. Gossip. Hey, Sister Amaka, you understand? A lot of persons gossip. The Bible says, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. You know you have gossip tendencies when you like talking too much. I'm telling you the truth. Don't excuse. I'm going to talk about this next time, but let me address it now. If you base your weaknesses and then you excuse them by temperament, by what they call it, zodiac sign. I am sanguine, I am melancholy, I am choleric, I am phlegmatic, I am Pisces, I am Leo, I am Cancer, I am whatever. If you think that is the way if you think that is the reason you behave the way you behave, you need deliverance, and we can conduct it for you right now. You have issues and you're not addressing them. You are excusing it by saying, it's my zodiac sign. What was Jesus' zodiac sign? No, answer me. You like talking too much. You talk too much, and he says, because I'm a sanguine. Please. Let's not excuse our weaknesses. Let's not excuse our tendencies. Tendencies are meant to be dealt with, not to be excused. I didn't come here tonight to tell you, okay, keep feeling that way. No. I came to tell you that it is common to every human being, but I also came to teach you how to overcome these tendencies. Gossip is another tendency that is common to Christians. The next is jealousy. I talked about this so lavishly in the last episode, which is available on our YouTube page. Why am I jealous? I'll advise you go back and listen to it. God helped us so much in that episode. I discussed what is jealousy. Why do people get jealous? Is it a natural emotion? Does it mean you are a witch when you feel jealous? It is a tendency. And if you go back to listen, I'm sure you get a lot from that. So I'm not going to talk much about this. Jealousy is another tendency that the average Christian faces. I'm going to put the next 2 points together, doubt and fear. Because doubt can sponsor fear and fear can sponsor doubt. You see that you have tendencies to doubt whenever God says something. If God is telling you little things and you're not believing, how are you going to believe when He starts telling you big things? When the Bible says, if you're not faithful in little, who shall give you much? Who shall commit to you the true riches? It's not just about money, but about committing things to your hand. If God is telling you to start that podcast, I battled with God for 1 year. Over 1 year to start this podcast because I was scared. I wanted to put everything together, make sure I had all together to start. Until it was like God was choking me. Gideon, start. I had to put away all my fears, put away all my doubts. The moment I took my step, everything became available. Don't tell God to order your steps when you're not ready to move your feet. Move your feet and He will guide your steps. So if you doubt God, it's a tendency that you're going to doubt Him in the future too. You're doubting little things. You are scared. I'm putting both of them together now. Doubt and fear. You're scared of every little thing. Cockroach. Cockroach enter your room, you shout blood of Jesus 70 times. You think Jesus was flogged 39 strokes of the cane, a crown of thorns on his head for you to use his blood for cockroach? Come on, it's a sign that you have fear tendencies. And if you are someone that is fearful, you're not going to achieve much. You must allow God to work in you, work that work perfectly in you to erase fear. Doubt and fear are the other tendencies the average Christian encounters. The next we'll look at, I think this should be number 8, materialism. A lot of Christians are extravagant. Your salary is 30,000 naira, but you are putting eye on that Brazilian wig of 250,000 naira. You are materialistic. Forget it. If you have the money to afford it, it's something different. You know you don't have the money to afford it, and then you are longing, you are lusting after it. You want it by all means. It's not a sin to desire it. But if you are willing to go to any length to get something that is materialistic, it's a sign that these are tendencies that when the money comes, you waste it. Maybe this is why God has not allowed many persons to be wealthy, because you waste his money, you waste his resources. Jesus taught us very clearly that the value of a man's life does not consist in the abundance of things that he possesses. If you see that you are becoming materialistic, you see this one you want, you see this one you want, you see this one you want. These are tendencies and they're just starting. Address them. Please address them. Number 9, unforgiveness. Okay, let me start with this story. February 14th, 2012, 9:48 p.m. A lady slapped me. I remember these details. Why did I start with that? I'm trying to differentiate between forgiveness and forgetting. That lady is we are very good friends today, one of my closest friends, which means I have forgiven her. But I'm someone that commits things to memory and I don't forget. That's why I remember all those details. But many persons, the reason they commit things to memory is because they want to do you back. That is unforgiveness. It is not easy to forget as it is easy to forgive. I know it's not easy to forgive, but it is easier to forgive than it is to forget. God is not a specialist in giving people amnesia. You now say somebody, I think you offended me before. No, you're not going to forget that easily. But if you see that you're keeping it in mind because I must do this person back, these are signs of unforgiveness. Person pinch you, you won't pinch them back. These are little signs. These are the little foxes that can destroy the vine. Unforgiveness is another tendency that the average Christian encounters. Number 10, selfishness. A lot of Christians are selfish. You're not selling fish, but you are selfish. You put your needs above God's and you put your needs above others. See, we must learn. I don't want to preach tonight, but this is another tendency. You realize that someone is coming into your room. You don't even know the person is coming. You're already hiding your food. No, there's not enough for both of you. You just don't want anybody to partake of anything you have. If you are seeing these tendencies, I'm not condemning you. God has not condemned you, and I'm not rebuking you. I'm only bringing this to your notice for you to know the common things, the common issues that Christians face. Selfishness is another tendency. Number 11, slothfulness. A lot of Christians procrastinate. A lot of Christians are not excellent. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings and not before mean men. The average Christian believes more in prayer than in hard work. And there's supposed to be a balance between these two. God will not come down from heaven and put money in your hands. He gives you power to get wealth, not wealth. That's what Deuteronomy 8 verse 18 says. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he that gives the power to get wealth. But if you are slothful, you put your hand in your bosom. That's what King Solomon said in Proverbs. And then you won't bring it back into your mouth again because you are so lazy. You won't do it. If you are noticing these tendencies, it is fine to have them, but it's not fine to keep having them. Slothfulness and that tendency. Let's look at two more, and then we'll wrap up on these common tendencies that Christians face. Legalism. That is number 12. Legalism. A lot of Christians are stuck with the way things are done. This is how we do it in my church. This is how we do it where I come from. Let me tell you how you know a spiritual person. A spiritual person is someone who is completely submitted to the rulership of the Holy Spirit as a final authority on every matter. Not this is how we do it in my church. This is how we do it where I come from. And so you're not open to different dimensions of God. I was telling someone that if Apostle Paul and Prophet Moses were both alive in our time, and then Moses saw what Apostle Paul was doing, and they were from this generation, Moses will call Paul a heretic. Because I did my study, and I don't know, maybe I didn't do an adequate study, but I saw that all through Moses' life, someone that spoke with God face to face as a man speaks with his friend, I never saw a place where he laid hands on somebody and the person was healed. I never saw a place where his shadow healed the sick, but this happened in Paul's life. If Moses was stuck to legalism, this is how God worked with me, and so this is the only way God works. He would have called Paul a heretic and say Paul is of the devil. And this is what is happening in our generation. We have so many ministries that are not open to other dimensions of God. You don't have all of God. You can't host all of God. So what makes you think you can show forth all of God? We are stuck to doctrine. Doctrine is for the maturing of the saints. It's not meant to keep us in a box. Because God has not done it does not mean God cannot do it. So if you put God in a box, that is legalism. In my church, it must be like this. It must be worship first before praise. Aish, I'm shaking table. It must be this first before this. It must eat. No. You are the owner of the church. Fine. But God is the owner of the service. He can move anyhow he wants. Don't be stuck to legalism. If you are seeing these tendencies, you see they are very stiff-necked. Maybe I'll do a session, another episode on this some other time, because this is a very broad topic. It must be this. I'm used to this. I'm used to this. I'm used to this. These are the tendencies. You can see them early on and identify that I need to deal with these things. Number 13, seeking validation and the applause of men. I was in this web. I was held in this before. I was just looking for validation from people, looking for the applause of men until God delivered me. It's a tendency. After I do small thing, you wait for someone to tell you, guy, you tried. You are not the one marking your script, it is God. If God says I try and nobody tells me I try, that's more than enough for me. You see that you're beginning to seek applause of men. You're beginning to seek validation from others. These are tendencies. Address them. Can I add one more? Because this is actually very important. All forms of sexual immorality. Like I said before, we are brought up in a society, especially the African society and the Nigerian society, where you can't sit with your parents or your siblings to discuss some kind of things, except there are some exceptions, of course, in some families. Imagine you call your father now, your Nigerian father, Daddy, I think I'm having homosexuality tendencies. Holy Ghost fire! You see that they're taken to a man for deliverance when a little talking to and prayer and putting them through spiritual exercises can help with these tendencies. But the fear of being judged makes many people leave these tendencies, and the devil will prowl on it like a thief in the night. He will just come up and use your tendencies to affect you. All forms of sexual immoralities, from masturbation to pornography to lesbianism to homosexuality to whatever it is, they all start as tendencies. LGBTQ started as tendencies. It didn't just come up one day. I identify as. Should I go there? You understand? May the Lord give you understanding in Jesus' name. Now, before we round up for tonight, I want to ask you a question. Do you know your tendencies? I've listed, I think, 14 of them. But your own tendency might not even be what I have listed. Do you know your tendency? God has helped me. Up until this point, I know my tendencies. And it becomes hard for the devil to try to use these things. Because the devil cannot come up one day to come and attack me with something God has revealed to me and is helping me work on. I'm not saying I've overcome all of them. I'm saying I'm aware of at least almost all of them. And then I start working on them. Is it pride? Is it desire for fame? Is it quest to be known? Is it anger? Is it lust? Whatever it is, do you know your tendency? If you don't know it, I bet you by God, when the devil comes, you won't see him coming. But if you know your tendencies, you'll be 1,000 steps ahead of the devil. But I want to let you know that you're not alone. Yes. Like I said, I'm not condemning you. God is not rebuking you. This is just to bring knowledge to us. People from the Bible had tendencies. And that's the final thing we'll look at tonight. We'll look at some men of God, women from the scriptures that had tendencies, that battled with some of these things. So you know that it's not wrong that you have these things. It will only be wrong if in perpetuity you've refused to outgrow them. That is when it becomes a cause for alarm. Let's look at some of these Bible characters and the things they struggled with, and then we'll close for tonight. King David. Yes, I want to start with him. At least that's one of the most popular Bible figures. King David. In 2 Samuel chapter 11 verses 1 to 4, we'll see all about King David's struggle with lust and adultery. That shepherd boy, that innocent 17-year-old boy that God anointed as king. Now, he had tendencies to rebel, and God dealt with that in Adullam. But in Adullam, there was no man around him. So most probably he didn't know he had lust and adultery tendencies until it came to a point when he was strolling the top of his house, and then he saw one fine girl that was pouring water on her body. That's when he knew that he had these tendencies and because he didn't know actually, it came upon him and he acted. If he had known that I have these tendencies, he would have dealt with them. So King David, yes, the man after God's own heart, battled with lust and adultery. Apostle Peter, of course, the great Apostle Peter, who later became bold and impulsive but he battled with fear and he denied Jesus. Because of fear, Apostle Peter looked at a small girl and called her auntie. And that little maid came. He said, "Woman, what have I to do with you? I don't know this man." Because of fear. So he had fear tendencies. Apostle Peter, okay, let me put him in this, what we call temperament, was a sanguine by what we studied about him in the Bible. But see how God transformed him. Let's leave that for another day. Apostle Peter battled with fear. He had those tendencies. Moses, one of the greatest prophets that ever lived, the only man that spoke with God face to face as a man speaks with his friend. We can see that in Numbers chapter 20, verses 10 and verse 12. This was a leader chosen by God himself right from his birth. Yet he battled with impatience and disobedience. God said, "Speak to the rock." He said, "No, last time I hit it too. Let me hit it this time too. These people, look at these stiff-necked people." But now you beg God now and say, "May God not destroy them." Look at this thing now. He had those tendencies. Of course, he was a stammerer, and these are tendencies peculiar. I don't want to talk about tendencies peculiar to a particular set of persons, okay? That is not part of our discussion. But you understand that he had these tendencies and they were never addressed. And that's why he became impatient and he disobeyed God. Apostle Paul, the chiefest of apostles, the chief apostle as we like to call him. Let's look at 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 15. I can't read that because of time. This is 1 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 15. Paul battled with pride. The apostle Paul battled with pride. This was a great apostle, and you can't blame him. The kind of revelation this man operated with, one that we didn't see all through the Bible, one that went to the third heavens, heard things that was unlawful to be spoken among mortals, yet he heard it. He had encounters with Jesus. So knowledge can build pride. That's what the Bible even tells us, that knowledge puffeth up. He battled with pride. So you have those pride tendencies. The greatest apostle also had them. So don't go too hard on yourself. All right, let's look at the next. We'll see Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19 verses 1 to 4. Elijah battled with bouts of fear and depression. "I and only I am the only prophet left in Israel that has not bowed the knee to Baal or kissed his lips." And God said, "Shut up, I have 7,000 elsewhere." He had these tendencies. He ran away from Jezebel, a great prophet that caught fire. Tendencies. Samson, a man of God that the spirit of might rested on in a way that we never saw throughout the Bible again. He battled with lust. Samson's issue was not Delilah, his issue was lust. Because before Delilah, there was someone else. What are you doing going to a brothel to look for somebody? He had lust tendencies and he didn't address this. And it was lust that brought Samson down, not even Delilah. He couldn't control, I don't say he couldn't control his libido, but actually he couldn't. Samson had lust tendencies. Sarah, yes, the mother of all nations, she had impatient tendencies. And the fact that the devil waited for the time of her miracle to trigger her tendency. You know, look at how old Sarah was. Imagine how long she had been married to Abraham. She didn't offer her slave to Abraham to sleep with, but just 13 years to her miracle. The devil triggered this tendency of impatience. Let me give you Hagar. And Abraham said, "Oh, let me listen to my wife." And he did. And he gave birth to what forth is Isaac. So Sarah had impatience tendencies. Let's look at one more and then we'll close for tonight. Jonah. Yes, the prophet Jonah, of course, he had disobedience tendencies. God said, "Go to Nineveh." Jonah is a perfect example of no grief for anybody. He said, "Go to where? Nineveh. Allah, going to Tarshish." And he went because he had those tendencies. The devil can only operate on your tendencies. All right? And that's all. Okay, can I add one more? Jesus. Oh, yes. I'm not preaching heresy. Jesus had tendencies. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15. It says, "For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize and understand our weaknesses and temptations, but one who has been tempted, knowing exactly how it feels to be human, in every respect as we are, yet without committing any sin." Jesus was tempted in all points possible, in all forms possible. The devil could tempt Jesus with turning stone to bread because the hunger was there. Jesus had tendencies. He was 100% human while he walked on the earth. If Jesus had tendencies, who are you not to have tendencies? But guess what? Many of all the stories that I listed, God turned it around for good because God helped them to walk on their tendencies. The Peter that called one small girl auntie, look at how bold he came. Became very bold and impulsive. Paul became very humble. Jesus walked on these tendencies. The Holy Spirit walked on these tendencies. So I wanted to let you know that you're not alone in this. Okay? We are out of time. I've overshot my time by so long. So in the next part of this series, which will come up by next week, we'll look at how to identify your tendencies and how to overcome your tendencies. I'm not a preacher, by God's grace. Not yet anyway. I'm here to teach you. I'll give you practical steps on how to identify your tendencies, how I identified mine, how God helps me to identify mine, and how you can come out of them. Practical steps. I won't just tell you pray and fast. These are part of it. I'm going to give you actionable steps that you can apply to your everyday life. And I trust God to help us with our tendencies so that we can raise believers that are mature, believers that will become too strong for the devil to chew. So thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for staying all through the end, and I hope to see you again next week. Please don't forget to engage with us across all our social media platforms, and you have any question, any observation, any contribution, please drop it in the comments section. The team will be there to reply and of course get back to you. Once again, this is the Total Christian Life podcast, where we herald biblical standards. My name is Gideon Abalaka, but always you can call me man with Savi Jesus. I'll see you again next week. Until then, remain rapturable.